weeks is also about getting us ready. Josh is going to be preaching on the Sabbath. Now, if we don't understand the Sabbath, then we're not going to do what is really important, that we come at our work from a position of rest, and we'll just get swallowed up in all that God has. So we're talking about obedience today. The Sabbath is a command. Josh is going to unpack all of that, and it's really, really important that we get committed to that. Let's give him a great big welcome.
Morning, everybody. Just rearranging things. Well done, Lynn, for not saying sabbatical. Bit of an in-joke. She kept saying sabbatical over and over. No, Sabbath. Although, sabbatical, Sabbath, you probably get where the word comes from. Cool. Now, whether or not they're going to stay lit with all the fans going, we will see. As Christians, we're called to be holy. It's one of the reasons that you're here, to sing, to realign yourself, to hear a message about how to live and to live holy. That's why one of the reasons we come on a Sunday and gather. It's one of the reasons we read our Bible. It's one of the reasons that we pray. It's because we're called to be holy. That's why we meet with mentors and have people coach us. Holy means, the word just means to be set apart, to be different. You could say special, actually. But it's more than all of these things. It's a whole combination of things. There's morality attached to it as well. We're to be different morally. We're set apart by Him, God, for Him. That is what it is to be holy. And the Bible calls us to be holy. Leviticus 11:44 says, "For I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourself, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy." Leviticus 19:2, this is God sort of telling Moses what to say to the people. He says, "Speak, Moses, to all the congregation of the people of Israel, and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." And as you would hope, and you can see this throughout the entirety of the Bible, the attributes and the ways that we refer to God in the Old Testament includes, obviously it's the Trinity there, although it's not necessarily as evident on first glance, the same attributes are then applied to Jesus. Because in 1 Peter it says, "But just as he who called you is holy," talking about Jesus, "just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy." So we have this same attributes and the same thoughts attached to Jesus, as you'd expect with God in the Old Testament. So to live differently, to be different, to stand out from the world, to be special. How we live is important. And when you think about how to live, what's maybe some of the things that would come to mind? What would be a guide? Give me something that would come to mind as a guide on how to live. Don't all shout at once. The Bible, excellent, thank you. Yeah, brilliant. So we'll start with the Bible, the Word of God. That is the source. Can you think of anything within the Bible? It's contained within the Bible. Short, snappy, maybe a little list. To be a giver, that's a good example of what it is to be holy. Can anyone think of a list in the Bible that might give you some? The 10 Commandments. Fantastic. We have this sort of like the big 10 that are put out there for the people to live by as a way of being holy. Okay, who's going to give me some? Come on. Show off. Who knows some 10 commandments? Don't commit adultery. What was it? No. Do not covet thy neighbour's donkey would be one. Do not covet. What was it? Don't lie. Good, yeah. Jesus encapsulates the law and the prophets in that, though. What was it? Honour your mother and father. Yeah. Any more? Don't kill. Well, don't murder. Yep. We won't get into that too much right now. But yeah, don't murder. Absolutely. Honour your parents. We've had that one. Good. Don't steal. Yeah. We're missing some. Don't. What? Yeah, we've had that one. God. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Boom. Shakalaka. Right. Good. That's a good one. No other gods. Love the Lord thy God. Yep. No idols. Boom. Thank you. I do feel that might be the 11th commandment. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Maybe don't add to the scriptures as well. Maybe could be in there. So yeah, I think we did them all there. But the one we're going to focus on is remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. It is one of the 10 commandments. In fact, actually, this is going to blow out now when I do this. At the start of Sabbath, ceremonially Jews light candles. They light 2 candles, generally speaking, although you can light more and you can light one. You can do whatever you like. You don't have to light a candle. It doesn't really mean anything other than it's something to do to signify the beginning of Sabbath. But they light 2, and I cheat because I've got one that's got 2 wicks in it. Ta-da! So that's what I do. But the reason for these 2, just complete off sidetrack, is because of that, the fact that it's remember and keep. That's why the Jews do it. So they have 2 candles for that main reason, that the command is to remember and keep when it comes to the Sabbath. So the word Sabbath. Let's get in it. The word Sabbath. It comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, which literally means to stop, to cease, to desist from all activity. It is a day of rest. And as I said, in Jewish practice, it begins with the lighting of candles. And they actually do that on a Friday evening. So they do that around sunset. There's this thing around 18 minutes leeway. You can read into that if you're really interested. But anyway, basically it's around the evening of Friday till the evening the next day. In the Bible, where do we see this start? Where is the origin? You'll always, whenever I'm talking and speaking about things, you'll often hear me refer back to Genesis. It's my sort of go-to book. What's the first origin, if you like, of a principle? Now, you'll get things further unpacked and fleshed out throughout the Bible, but often you'll find principles of things in the beginning, in Genesis. And so Genesis 2, 2-3 says, by the 7th day, God had finished the work he was doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all of his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Sabbath and rest is the oldest principle that we have. It's hardwired into the creation of the universe. And I would argue, if it was hardwired as part of who God is, seeing that we're made in his image, it's actually hardwired into us too. And so if we don't do it, we are already starting to fight against the hard wiring of being made in his image. It's sort of more than morally right. Do you see what I mean? It's a principle of life. It's a rhythm of life. Now, this everlasting principle, which predates the law, is actually then not only there at the beginning, it's not only there with the repetition of referring to Sabbath that goes throughout the entirety of the Bible. It's not only then reinforced by Jesus, but actually, if you read Hebrews 4, when it talks about when we die, it talks about us entering into his Sabbath rest. Yeah. So it's an everlasting principle. It's there from the beginning. And we enjoy when we go and spend our time with Jesus for eternity. That is our destiny. Our destiny is Sabbath also. You tracking? You with me? Come on. So, some people might say, well, you know, all this Sabbath stuff sounds like you're living under the law to me. I love it when people make those little comments. It's great normally. But under the law, that you're not free. You know, Christ has set us free from the law. He's abolished the law, and now we're under grace. Almost every time somebody says that, they're wrong. But generally speaking, in this sense, it's definitely wrong. Because it's predating the law, right? It's there from the beginning. And it's there at the end. If we was under just the law, God wouldn't do it and set as an example from the beginning. And it certainly wouldn't be what we're going to enjoy for an eternity in heaven. The first Sabbath, and we need to get this, the first Sabbath wasn't actually for people. It was for God, primarily. God rested. He stopped. He ceased. Was God tired? It was like, no, God wasn't tired. He wasn't stressed out. He wasn't speaking to, having a little chat with the Trinity, oh, guys, seriously, I've been doing this for 5-6 days now. I'm worn out. The stress, those animals, they're really intricate to make. Think like Warhammer and painting those little figurines. God was like making an entire species. He wasn't getting stressed out about it. It was all easy for God. It was like just a word and it happened. And yet he rested. Why? Because he wanted to. Because he wanted to make rest part of his rhythm and way of being and existing, and he wants to make it part of our way and existing too. Okay, so let's get into it. Hands up who thinks murdering people's a good idea? No? Lying? Anyone thinking, you know what, this week I'm going to do some real good lying? No? Coveting? I'm going to go cover everything I see. No. Who here keeps the Sabbath and stops from everything they're doing every week? No. Which is funny, right? Because the rest of the Ten Commandments we're pretty like, I wouldn't do that. But when it comes to this, it's literally one of the Ten Commandments. It's there from the beginning. It's repeated throughout the entirety of Scripture. And yet, we don't do it. Does anyone feel like that's a bit weird? Isn't that a bit odd? One of the objections, perhaps, to Sabbathing is that Jesus maybe didn't Sabbath, that he wasn't that bothered. Well, I'm afraid that would definitely not be true either. Jesus never broke any of the commandments. In fact, what he did with the Sabbath is make sure that it was framed correctly. It wasn't there to oppress people. It wasn't there to try and catch people out. In fact, one of the most important things that Jesus says about the Sabbath is in Matthew 12:8 and the other synoptics, the other Gospels, is that he is the Lord of it. When we think about Sabbath and we think about resting in God and we think about it being a part of our worship to God and it orientating ourselves to face God, Jesus makes sure we know that all of that is also about him. That we are resting in him. We are resting in Jesus. He is the Lord of it. He also reminds us, Mark 2:27, when people are saying, they were walking along, him and his mates, him and his disciples, going for a little wander, and they're a bit hungry, so as they're going, they're sort of picking out grains, ears of wheat and eating the grains. And some smart aleck comes along and is like, you shouldn't do that on the Sabbath. That sort of thing. Because it's religiosity, right? Like they're eating. And It's not even that they have to prepare anything or do any work. They're just walking along and eating. But they were thinking he could get one over them. And so Jesus makes a really important statement. He says, the Sabbath was made for man and man, not man, the Sabbath. So the Sabbath has been created for us. It was for God. He rested. But it's also for us. As I said, we're made in his image. We share our likeness with God, which always just blows my mind. That was loud, wasn't it? Should have been further away. But just in case anyone was sleeping. But you know what I mean? That we share our image with God. And so it makes sense that the Sabbath was also made for us. So it's a principle that predates the law. It's one of the 10 Commandments. Jesus didn't abolish it. In fact, he just made sure we knew that he was the Lord of it. He then reorientated it around to make sure that we know why we're doing it, that it's not about just keeping rules, but it is for us. And we know that we're going to enter into it when we die. What we have to say, though, is that there is no room in the Bible for the Sabbath to be optional. Would you agree? There's no room for the Sabbath to be optional. Now, that should concern some of us. I mean, it certainly concerned me a few years ago when I sort of stumbled across this and was kind of shocked. I've been a Christian for however long, 20 odd years. I've been in ministry by then for probably 15, 16 years. And I'm like, why am I shocked by the idea of the Sabbath and the fact, and why have I just never kept it? Why have I never treated it as important? And so, this is why we're here today. So what is it? What is it? Sabbath isn't a slow down. Sabbath isn't a take it easy. Sabbath means stop. Stop. Now, I've deliberately stopped a couple of times just so you can feel how awkward that makes you feel. There's something in us that just doesn't want to do it. Isn't it? Do you know what I mean? As soon as somebody stops, even when they stop talking, you just want to fill the blanks in for them, don't you? I do. I'm terrible for that. But there's something in us that's uneasy with the idea of stopping. I'm going to read a bit from Deuteronomy 5. If I can find it. I did mark it, so I should be able to. Cool. It says, Deuteronomy 5, verses 12 to somewhere, we'll decide in a minute. Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant. No servants doing any work either. It's going to be hard, isn't it? All those servants, we've got to give the day off. Nor your ox, your donkey. Anyone got a donkey? Yep, you've got to give it the day off, I'm afraid. So you're walking. Or any of your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. So what do? We stop. We don't do any work. Anything that looks or feels like work, that's what you don't do. Now, if you, I don't know, if you like exercise, if you going for a bike ride, it might feel like it's a bit of it's hard work. It's a bit, it's exercise in some way, but actually it's something that energizes you. You take great joy from it, etc. Then feel free to go for a bike ride. But if your job is bike riding, I don't know what job that would be. I've chosen a bad example. This is what happens when I don't think before I speak. But if your job is bike riding, then bike riding on the Sabbath is probably not going to feel that great, right? And it's the same with everything. And the amazing thing is, it's not just us, but it's what we do for others. The people who are under our care and control, we give them Sabbath too. We don't force anyone else to work. Why? Because it's commanded, and it's, as it says, to the Lord. And so we cease and we stop. And it's for the foreigner, for people who live around us to see and witness something different. Now this is where it gets fun. Why? Now you can say, well, you've already explained that, Joss. You know, you've just told us it's in the Bible. Like, yeah, true. It's a rhythm. It's a rhythm of grace that God's set out. But why is it important that we Sabbath? I'm going to give us two reasons. And the first reason is the one that almost can bring a tear to my eye just thinking about it. And it's this, the thing I said from verse 15. It talks about stopping your work, everybody stopping. And then it says this, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. Why do we Sabbath? We Sabbath because we are free. You are free. This story of God saving the people from Egypt, parting the sea, showing his mighty hand, rescuing them into the desert, providing for them. Let's everybody who's a Jew and reading the Old Testament and hearing these stories know that I can rest, I can stop, because I trust that God has it covered. I am free, I am saved, and God has it covered. And if you want to just play with this just a little bit, for us, followers of Jesus, we were slaves. We were slaves to the world. We were slaves to sin. And God, with outstretched hands, you tracking? With outstretched hands, has bought you freedom. Amen? Therefore, we stop because we are free. We Sabbath because we are free. Because of the outstretched hands of Jesus, we are free. Our subject or our word for the year is be. And so this little message is be still, be free. Just let that sit in your spirit a moment, that you can be still, that you can stop, and you can be free because what Jesus has done. By his outstretched arms, he's rescued us from the slavery of sin, from the slavery of the world, and now we're free. And we're free to stop and trust in him. It's interesting because it doesn't come easy. It doesn't come easy at all. I think that's why there's only two commands which are proactive. Honor your mother and father and keep the Sabbath holy. The other ones are refrain froms, don't, thou shalt nots, or whatever. There's only two that are proactive, and this is one of them. And it's the only one that says remember. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, oh, crumbs, it felt like a shot in the stomach, Remember. Why? Because we forget. We've just established that, the church by and large has forgotten. How? How's that even happened? It's crazy, isn't it? And it says here, remember. Remember. And so today we remember. We remember to keep the Sabbath holy. Because it's easy to forget. And I'm not saying all this because I aced it. I won't bore you with my life story, but just to say that my sort of landing on some of this stuff really came out of a result of of failure and of not doing this, of not Sabbathing, not resting. 5-6 years ago, I was senior leader of a large church. I was very driven, very successful from a sort of Christian view, if you like, and had sort of all the hallmarks of success, if you know what I mean. But I was driven by an affirmation. I needed affirmation from the world and from others. Fear drove me. I was constantly trying to achieve and be more. And so I didn't Sabbath. I didn't rest. In fact, I did the exact opposite of that. I stopped reading the Word to feed my soul. I stopped praying to hear my Father's voice. I just did it because I needed to prepare a message and I was in a prayer meeting. It was just, the things that I used to delight in just became things that I did just because I had to, and I did it as quick as I could. And we've all been there, right? When life gets busy, those things are the first things to go. John Mark Comer says that hurry is violence to the soul. Violence to the soul. I was self-harming, not honoring God, thinking that somehow the world needed me and all my effort. What a joke. And it led to a huge failure, massive mental breakdown, and a whole bunch of stuff. Did you know, I'm reading a book by Ken Shingmatsu, and he says that, interestingly, the Chinese characters for busyness, they have pictorial characters. The characters for busy is heart and death. That's the two characters. Crazy, right? And I felt that. And we can feel it as soon as things change, when we actually take a real day. If you think back to the pandemic, not everybody, but quite a lot of people I spoke to, there was lots of concerns and other things, but one thing that was quite consistent as well was, there's something good about this change of pace. Like, a lot of people are like, actually, I'm not sure I want it to go back to normal. This slowing down. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of people who had that sense. I know not everybody, but there's something in our souls which knows it's right. And living under constant drivenness, being constantly, is just not the way to go. Carrie Newhoff, he's a leadership guy, says exhaustion functions like a gateway drug to a whole host of unintended consequences. Addictions, marital breakdown, mental health, etc. Exhaustion is our number one problem. So be still and be free. If you people who take notes or want to think of some books, just by the way, John Mark Comer, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, Peter Scazzero, Emotional Healthy Leader. In fact, they do a whole bunch. Combining all my words there. Emotional Healthy Church, Unemotional Healthy, all that sort of stuff. There's some good ones out there. And so coming into land, final thought. Sabbath, we Sabbath because we're free. And the other thing we do, the other reason that Sabbath is a few, as I say, but the other reason that I love, this is the second one I said I was going to mention, is because it's a sign. When I became a Christian, I decided I wasn't going to drink. Some of you might know, some of you might not know. But I've never drank in my life. Just getting going. I've never drank in my life, and there was no real major reason for that, other than a lot of my mates were drinking, I was young, and I just kind of wanted it to be something that I didn't do because I love Jesus and I want it to be different. Now, I'm not saying that you need to do that or that it's even right. As it happens, I grew up in pubs, so my family all drank, and I'd go to college thinking of beer because I'd been tapping barrels that morning or whatever else anyway. But it was just something I did. And this is what it says in Exodus 31, verses 13 to 14. Say to the Israelites, you must obey my Sabbath. This will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come, so that you'll know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath because it's holy to you. Anyone who desecrates it will be put to death, and those who do any work on it will be cut off from their people. This will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come. You know, when we stop and Sabbath, it is so countercultural. To have a day when you say, I'm not doing that, this is the Lord's day. This is the Lord's day. It's a sign to the whole world that the kingdom of God is different, now and forever. There's some really big companies that close on Sundays. And one of them is B&H Photos. It's a massive chain in America. And when they've asked about it, they said, you know, you're missing out so much. Even their website, this is how clever it is, even their website won't let you pay or order on a Sabbath, on a Saturday. It'll hold it in a basket and then email you and ask if you want to pay the next day. And people are like, this is a massive multi-million pound organisation. They've been asked about it countless times, and the director of the company then once said, yeah, it may cost us, but we respond to a higher authority. Wow. Do you want to respond to a higher authority? Do you want your life to be holy, to be different, to be special? Be still. Be free. We stop because we are free, because we've been bought at a great price. You've been saved from the justification of your existence by your own works. Be still and be free. You've been saved from the people-pleasing compulsion that resides within us all. Be still and be free. You've been saved from trying to please your own families and win their approval. Be still. Be free. You've been saved from the relentless urge to acquire more wealth and stuff, to impress a world that you've been saved out of. You're holy. Be still. Be free. When we live like this, church, when we truly start to live like this, we honor God, and it's a sign to the whole world that we're holy, that we're different, that we operate on a whole different plane of thinking. And when people say why, we can say, yes, my soul finds rest in God, and my hope comes from Him.